Okay, so for my first question, what got you into performing? What inspired you to start performing? How did you develop a love for theater?
Yeah, so I first started with dancing. When I was starting off preschool, my mom put me in tap and ballet classes. And I think my love for theater started with my mom. She was always a theater goer, a huge theater fan. So she first put me and all my sisters into dance classes. I have two older sisters, but I was the only one that really like fell in love with it. So I started with dancing at 3. I loved it. I was on like a dance competition team up until I was about 8 years old. And that's when my mom put me in my first musical. It was Schoolhouse Rock. And I was in the ensemble. And like after that, I just like fell in love with musical theater. Like since then, I had to sing, dance, and act. I was obsessed with musicals. I was obsessed with performing musicals. And yeah, that's kind of the progression. Started with dancing at 3. And then once I was around 8 or 9, I started doing vocal lessons and became more like well-rounded in doing all 3, singing, dancing, and acting.
You also did In the Heights as Nina. How did that role impact you, and what was it like being a part of that musical?
Oh my gosh. In the Heights is my favorite musical. Nina was my dream role for forever. I played Nina when I was 18, and it was the summer before I went off to college. And that was a really big transitional moment in my life. I was transitioning from high school, Talia, very dependent on those around her, to kind of more of an independent Talia doing her own thing in college. And I felt like I played that role at the perfect time. You know, Nina is a character that really kind of like struggles to find herself, but struggles with college and with school and with the expectations that are put on her. And I felt like in that moment in my life, I was really relating to that, not wanting to let anyone down, like about to step into this next chapter of my life and wanting to do it successfully and having that fear. So yeah, playing Nina, like if anyone ever asks me, what's your favorite role you've ever played? It's always Nina. I'm Puerto Rican, Nina's Puerto Rican. It really, it's a role that really resonates with me. And I really want to play it again. I'm like waiting to do it again. I love that show.
That's amazing. In the Heights, I watched it my high school year. It was for my theater program in high school that did it, and that's what got me into reviewing musicals and interviewing people because I was just so obsessed with In the Heights. Um,
Yeah, totally. I love that musical. It's the best.
yeah, and so you went to UCLA as well. How did you choose UCLA, and did you know right away that you wanted to go there?
Opposite. I did not want to go to UCLA. So essentially, I auditioned for about, I'm going to say like 12 or 13 musicals, colleges. And I was accepted into about like 7 or 8 programs. And I really wanted to go on the East Coast. I really wanted to go to New York City. I really just like wanted to be on Broadway. I wanted to be near Broadway. I've grown up in California. So I was really excited to just move, just explore something different that was in California. So after narrowing it down, I was between Pace University and UCLA, and I visited both schools. And it really, this is kind of cliche, but it really came down to like where like the feeling I got when I was there. When I was at Pace, I was feeling a little uneasy because I really had thought that that was my like school. I really like put a lot of expectation on I was going to be there and I was going to be like that was it. But I didn't really get that feeling. And then I went to UCLA and I was so pleasantly surprised. It was just such a beautiful campus and the program had a lot to offer. It's a BA, so it's 50% academics and then like 50% musical theater. And I went to an arts high school. I went to Orange County School of the Arts. And so I didn't have the normal high school experience. I really focused on musical theater in high school. So I was kind of excited to go to like a real, like big university that would make me a little bit more well-rounded versus just focusing on musical theater, like kind of what Pace had to offer. So that plus in-state tuition and just, yeah, it really just came down to like how I felt when I visited both schools. And UCLA had a lot of dance and ballet. I mean, Pace did too, but ultimately I chose UCLA because of how I felt when I visited the school and I just fell in love with it.
And what classes did you take in UCLA that you think you were able to incorporate once you went on tour?
Yeah. Okay. So definitely ballet. So I was in the Anastasia National Tour. I was in the ensemble and I understudied Anya. And in the ensemble, I danced on point. And I'm trained in ballet. I'm trained on point, but I hadn't really focused on my ballet throughout high school. I was really more just doing like jazz, tap, musical theater, hip hop. I kind of like put ballet to the side. But then once I went to UCLA, the program there, freshman and sophomore year, you only take ballet. So you take 3 days a week ballet, hour and a half. And then your junior and senior year, you add in jazz and tap. So I really had to be patient because I really wanted to like do jazz and tap, but they had only offered so much ballet. And now looking back, I'm so grateful for that. And I honestly don't think I would have booked Anastasia without improving my ballet as much as I did at UCLA. So that was something I was really grateful for looking back, in a class that I really used for my experience in Anastasia. Another class, we had a lot of, my freshman year, we had a lot of classes that taught us like what a stage manager does, what a lighting designer does, what the costume designers do. So I felt like I really used those classes to like inform me on what everyone around me was doing while on tour. I felt like that was really important, to not just be in my own world, to not just be like, I'm the performer and this is what I do. When you travel with a company like that and your friends and basically family, with everyone involved in this production, it's important to have an understanding of what everyone's doing and like the stage manager's job and what the costumer has to deal with and the wigs and all of that. So I really used what I learned at UCLA there to like inform me and help me be more well-rounded on tour. And yeah, and then I also learned a lot about like vocal health and health in general, taking care of your mind and your body. I feel like that was really important on the road too, since you're just always on the go. Yeah, I think those were kind of like some of the major things I learned at UCLA that helped me.
Wow, that's awesome. And one of my favorite parts in Anastasia is the ballet, the Swan Lake Ballet. So that's awesome that you got to do that role. Um, what do you think when you auditioned, what was the process like?
Yeah, so I auditioned for Anastasia my senior year at UCLA. And I have an agent. I'm with CESD Talent Agency, and they had just sent me out a video audition for Anya. They were looking for Anya. So I sent in the audition cut they had me do was the end of Journey to the Past. So I just sent in a video of me doing that. And after that, I received a callback for Anya, but I was in California and I told them that I was willing to fly out, but they were like, no, like this is just like a first callback situation. Just Zoom us. So I was like, okay, it's like not ideal, like, right. Like you'd rather be in the room, but I was at UCLA. So it was just the best for me to Zoom in. So I
Right.
zoomed in and they had me do Journey, End of In My Dreams, and 2 or 3 scenes. And I did all that on Zoom and I felt pretty good about it. I was pretty proud of myself. But again, on Zoom, you can't really gauge. It's hard to gauge, right? Because it's like, they're like, okay, go. And they turn off their cameras. And then it's just you just standing there singing. Like, you can't really like get like, are they listening really? Or what are they doing? But I had felt good about it. So after that, I received an email from casting like 2 weeks later. And they're like, hi, we see that you're a dancer. And we are now considering you for the dancer ensemble track that covers Anya. I'm like, okay. They're like, can you come to this dance call? And I couldn't. So luckily, well, yeah, because I was doing Pippin at UCLA and it was our opening night. And I was like, can I send in videos? So they let me send in videos. And I essentially had to send in a video of me doing some point work, kind of like the Odette point combination. I had to send in like a musical theater jazz combination. I had to do some like basic point work, like échappés, bourrées. And then they had me sing some high soprano notes from Once Upon a December and like an ensemble cut from one of our group numbers. And and In My Dreams. So I sent all that over. And after that, I got an email back and they asked me for some more point work. So then I sent in more point work. And then a few weeks later, I got the email or the call that I had booked the ensemble track that covers Anya. So it was crazy. It was like in my last week at UCLA. And it was just like such a huge celebration to like graduate and move on to being on tour. It was so cool.
And what was the difference between being in the ensemble, like your ensemble track, and performing Anya?
There were many differences. My ensemble track, the main focus of my ensemble track was the dancing and a lot of quick changes. That was kind of like a thing with the ensemble in Anastasia, is that we are in it so much and we play so many different characters that if we're not on stage, we're quick changing backstage. So in my ensemble track, I received a lot of rehearsal for it. I received like 3 weeks of rehearsal. And for that track, I really had to hone in the dancing. And I was also like a high soprano in the show. So really work on all these like high notes that I was singing. For Anya, as an understudy, I received 3 rehearsals. So a lot of it more was on me than it was working and rehearsing with like creatives. It was a lot more like, okay, here's the blocking. Now you work on it. So that was a huge difference. Was I really created Anya for myself, and my ensemble track was more curated in like a real like rehearsal room under like real rehearsals and with a cast. And Anya, it's just she has those big songs. She has the big character arc that she goes on. So that you have to focus on that when you're on for Anya. And yeah, I would say that was kind of like the big difference, was like ensemble work, dancing, and like that's kind of what the focus was. And then Anya, it was more, she is the show, right? So you had to really do the singing, do the acting, and create that character for myself.
And what was your favorite part of the show? Like, did you have a favorite scene as Anya, or like tapping into the character?
Yeah. So at first, when I first started the tour, it was Journey to the Past, because it's just so gorgeous. It's the end of Act 1. It's like that dream power ballad that every girl dreams of doing, like being that princess on stage that sings that big Act 1 finale power ballad. I just loved it. And as the show went on, and as I kept performing her, I really fell in love with In My Dreams, because that song is just, it's so beautiful. It's a little nerve-wracking because it's the first song that Anya does. So that's why I didn't really like it at first, because I was like, I'm scared. But once I got comfortable in the role, yeah, In My Dreams just became a really special song to perform. It's such like an emotional song. So beautiful. So yeah, that was kind of my favorites, Journey and then In My Dreams.
Awesome. And do you have a favorite message or theme in the show?
Yeah. Honestly, my favorite thing about Anya and my favorite takeaway from the show is just like having that perseverance to just like find who you are and find what makes you, and like finding that strength within her. Anya is a very like confused and lost woman at the beginning of the show. And I find it so beautiful that she had this like perseverance at school. She's so strong to then by the end of the show, just like really know who she is and make strong decisions for herself. I feel like it's a very good message for women. And it just shows that like when you really put like your heart and mind into something, you can achieve it. And I just like really loved that about Anya's story. You know, she wasn't some little like weak little girl. Like she was very strong, quirky, fiery princess. So, and I just love that.
And what was the most difficult part of understudying Anya? Like the difficult scene or performance?
I would say the most difficult part, I mean, this could be like just a more like personal thing, but I would really put like a lot of pressure on myself to go out there and be perfect. I felt as an understudy, I never wanted to be underwhelming. I never wanted an audience member to open their playbill, see Talia's on as Anya, and for them to be like, oh, the understudy's on. Like I always wanted it to be like, yeah, the understudy's on, and I wanted to give them my best show. And sometimes it's hard to give them a perfect show when, as an understudy, you're not on all the time, you're not rehearsing all the time, you don't have it in your body the way that you might want to. So I felt like sometimes I would just like put so much pressure on myself to like perform as if this was a role I was performing every night, when in reality it wasn't. And there's going to be little mistakes, and there's going to be moments you feel like you can do better. And that's okay. Because at the end of the day, like, as long as you're putting in your all, and as long as you're like living in the moment up there, like the audience sees that and feels that. So I felt like that was probably the hardest part. It was my first time understudying. So I didn't really, it was just a lot of different emotions that I was navigating. So yeah, I think just knocking down that idea of perfection, and honestly just putting expectations on myself and pressure on myself that no one else is putting on, like just kind of like knocking down those barriers.
Right. And what did it mean to you to be a part of Anastasia? Like, what was it like touring? What did you learn through doing the role of Anya?
Touring, it's an amazing experience. It was really just like the perfect next step for me in my life. I had been in California my whole life, and at UCLA, and it just felt like such a great next step to be able to see the United States, see Canada, make all these new friends, and just like really grow independently as a person and as a performer. The show itself, Anastasia, I just love it. I think it is such a beautiful, feel good musical, and it's meant for anyone. It's your grandma can go, your little kid can go, you can go. You're right. It's just one of those musicals that is feel good, and you can see yourself in any of the characters. And it's also a beloved childhood cartoon. If you love the movie, you're going to love the musical. There's some differences, but it's all like the same music. So I also saw Anastasia when it was on Broadway, and it was my second Broadway musical I'd ever seen. And I just like remember sitting in the audience during Journey to the Past, just crying. Like I was in the third row, and I was like, this is just so beautiful. So something that was super rewarding about taking it on the road was like bringing that experience to others every night. Touring can be exhausting. It can be a lot, not being away from home like that, traveling 24/7, staying hotel room to hotel room. It can be very exhausting. So the biggest gift was to just like give that show to audiences every night. I just know it's just one of those kind of feel good, beautiful musicals, the costumes, the music. It's just one of those shows that just like leaves you feeling warm and gushy. So that was a big reward. It was to give that to audiences every night. And then as for Anya, something I learned, honestly, I was so nervous to do this. I was first understudying, first national tour. And first, yeah, like role of that magnitude, like on a tour, like playing the title character. So I had really had a lot of doubts in myself, a lot of fear. And then once I got there and felt so much support from my cast, from my creatives, and was able to really go out there and just do it, I felt like Anya, I found my own strength like she does. Like I found that kind of perseverance, and that fire. And I felt like I brought a lot of me into the character. So knowing that I can do that, and that like whatever role I step into, like bringing myself into it, like you could do that. That was a huge learning lesson for me. She taught me a lot, and she taught me that I can do it. And she taught me that even when you got those like jitters and you're scared and you think you can't, you can. So yeah, that was a huge takeaway from that experience, from playing that role. It did a lot for me.
Awesome. And did you have a favorite city that you toured?
Favorite city. I love Chicago. We were in Chicago for like a week or two. I just love it there. And I also loved Boston. Honestly, I'm like a big city girl. Any like big city we went to, I really loved Charlotte, North Carolina. And then we had 3 weeks in Canada when it was snowing, and this California girl does not
Yeah.
snow. So that I'm going to say that was the least favorite, because I'm not great in the snow. But yeah, any like big city I really loved. I'm going to say Chicago. Chicago takes the number one favorite.
Amazing. And how did you find like performing with the chemistry of Anya and Dimitri? How did you guys work out the scenes? And I know you said you only had like one rehearsal, but what was that like?
Totally. Yeah, that's a good question because don't have those same rehearsals, don't have those same moments to build that relationship the way I would if I did the show every night. So I went on every show I went on was with Willem, who was our Dimitri, except for one show I didn't go on with Willem. But what was cool with Willem was stepping into the role. It honestly was like a matter of really listening to each other, right? If you do a show every night, you kind of know how the line's going to go, and you kind of can get a gist for like the flow of the scene. But with a new person stepping in, you really have to listen. You have to listen to how the line's being delivered, listen to the emotion coming from each other, and the tempo, and just like you have to find that chemistry in the moment, which I think is actually pretty cool. It keeps things fresh. It keeps you on your toes. So that was kind of the dynamic with Willem. It was just always listening to each other and really being in the moment. My last time on as Anya, I got to go on with Dakota. Dakota is one of our ensemble males, and it was his debut. So that was really a cool experience because I was so used to leaning on Willem a little bit, kind of like letting him take the lead and kind of following, right, as someone that was just stepping into the role. But when it was Dakota's debut, it was really a matter of him leaning on me and him like really working with me, since it was his first time on, and he also had very few rehearsals like I had. So that was a really cool experience to really create something new together on that stage in front of an audience and really feel like grounded while Dakota was leaning on me. It was a cool shift, and it was like very full circle.
Awesome. And what quality do you admire the most of Anya?
She's kind of like fiery. She's a little, I don't want to say sassy because that can have like a negative connotation, but she had to grow up on her own in the streets of Russia. Like she had it hard. And you can really see that she makes these little comments that are so fiery and spunky. And I just love that. I love playing that side of her. I got a note one time that I was playing her a little too sassy. So I had to reel it back, but she had this like strong side of her. Like she's like, no one's messing with her. She gets in a fight with all these drunk men and she wins. It's so funny. Like she's just, she's like a spunky girl. And I think I love that about her.
And what is something you would like to say or ask Anastasia if you could?
Oh my gosh. That's a good question. Maybe I'd ask her about her childhood with her family. She grew up in the Romanov royal family, and she was the youngest besides her brother. And I had to do so much research on like her family. I played one of the sisters in my ensemble track. And I feel like knowing about like who she truly is as a person and like within her family, since that was like such a big part of her life, I think would really inform like me as a performer playing her, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And what advice would you give musical theater students who are probably auditioning in college, or who would, or any advice for people who would want to understudy?
Okay, I'm going to answer this in two parts. I'll do auditioning for like college and just pursuing musical theater, and then like understudy. So pursuing musical theater, it can be so hard. You get so many no's. I say something that really helped me is really find what makes you in this industry, what makes you happy, what makes you feel the most yourself, and just show that in your work, show that in the audition room, and find that confidence. I think that when you're going out and you're auditioning, it can feel so vulnerable. But if you just really rewire your thinking and rewire it as like, this is me showing you me, and that's a gift. And like, this is a mutual exchange of you watching me showing you. Like, you just really have to like walk into those audition rooms as like, and just feel like you feel grounded and find that confidence. I think that's kind of everything. And that's something that really helped me. It was like, okay, I know that I have this to offer and I know I'm good at this and I'm going to show you. And like, that's just all you can do. So that's kind of my advice for starting out musical theater, is just find that within yourself. It can be so hard with so many no's, but you have to kind of like know who you are and stick to your guns to really make it in this like industry. For understudying, just don't just there's a reason you play this role too. Don't feel like anyone's above you or below you. So many people can play Anya. So many people can play Sandy in Grease. Like, so many people are so talented and can bring so much to different roles. So you just have to understand that, and understand that like, while other understudies, people who were playing the role are amazing, you are too. And that's why you're there. And to never feel like you're underwhelming or letting anyone down the second you step on stage. And trusting yourself. If you don't get those same amount of rehearsals as someone else, just like trust that there's a reason that you were cast in this part, and that you got it, and that you are just as amazing as anyone else. And that's why you're playing the role too.
And did you have any early memories with the movie of Anastasia?
No. So I had never seen the movie until I booked the role. I was a big like Disney girl. I still am a huge like Disney girl. So Anastasia was like that Disney princess, not that princess that wasn't Disney. So I had never really grown up with her, but I loved the musical. When I was in high school, I went to the musical, and since then I loved it. So I was always a fan of the musical the second it came out, but I didn't grow up on the movie. I watched it a bunch once I booked the show.
And what did you see in that first, when you went to see the musical for the first time? What was something that like stayed with you, a particular scene or how somebody said a line?
This is like the basic answer, but it was really Journey to the Past that did it for me. Like, I was in the third row, my second Broadway show. So it was very special. I just like, Broadway has always been my dream job. So just to be in like a Broadway theater, I was already just like so excited. And she sings Journey to the Past, and she has like so much emotion, and like the lights come in, and I just was like a puddle of tears. Like, I just thought the song was so moving. The performance was so moving. And I remember turning to my mom and telling her, it's moments like this in theater that make me just like want to do it forever. Like, I just love theater. I love the way it affects a person. I love watching that like live, real emotion and performance from a person. So that was like one of those moments where it made me just like fall in love with musical theater more, or all over again. So that was, my most special moment from watching the musical for the first time.
As an understudy, did you have any, like, what was the craziest, like the least amount of time you got to get ready, or were you always did you always know ahead of time that you would be put in?
I didn't always know ahead of time. There were a few moments where Veronica or Anya would take like a personal day. And so I knew like a week in advance because she was like taking that day off. But I would say like the craziest experience was my debut. So I had my put-in, which a put-in is just like a tech rehearsal for some like an understudy who's like learning a part, right? So it's like that big last rehearsal where you get into the costume and everything. I had my put-in about like 2 months or a month and a half before my debut. And that's kind of a lot of time to not be practicing a role at all. It really was like put in and then in the wings, practicing under my breath. And then one morning at like 9 a.m, I wake up to a phone call from my stage manager. I was in Birmingham, Alabama. It's a Sunday, I think, or Saturday. I get a call and I answer, and she's like, "Hey, you ready? Like, you're on today." And it was a 2-show day. And so there was a matinee and a nighttime show, and it was like 9 a.m. And I was like, yeah, I'm ready. Instant freak out, like hang up the phone. First, I was like with my roommate, Rebecca, we're screaming, like freaking out that it was like happening, and like it was happening that day. And I just like out my script and I only had the morning to rehearse everything and warm up my voice. And then I was on for 2 shows. So not only was I like making my debut, but I was doing it twice, and I was doing it after not doing it for like 2 months. So that was pretty crazy, but it was the most rewarding experience. And it went well, and I'm here and I'm alive and I did it. So yeah, that was kind of like a crazy experience.
Amazing. And do you have a dream role, or like what's your next dream?
I would say, oh my God, I don't even have to think about it. I like started thinking about it, and like obvious answer, Jasmine in Aladdin is like my like ultimate dream role. Jasmine's my favorite princess. I'm Middle Eastern. I love that musical. And that would be kind of like, or just being in Aladdin in general, the musical is like a big dream of mine and something I'm really like wanting. So I would say that, Jasmine, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And would you like to, for your next like adventure, would you like to tour, or would you like to like do like a in residence type?
Um, I like touring, and I would tour. I guess the goal is to like sit down somewhere, but that doesn't
Right.
mean I would be unhappy touring. I actually have my next gig, my next contract lined up, and I'm leaving for it in 2 days. And I'm
Oh my
announcing it
gosh.
on Monday. So on Monday we will see what that is. So that's why it's hard for me to kind of speak on it, because I kind of know what I'm doing next.
Right, right,
So yeah, I guess stay tuned. I mean, maybe by the time this is posted, it'll already be all like on my Instagram and stuff. But yeah, I do kind of have something
right.
lined up that I'm really excited for. And yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Anastasia is one of my